Hey y'all, today I wanted to talk to you about how I got off welfare and how you can as well. I'm just going to give you I'm going to tell you my story and then probably give you some pointers or some tips, or at least give you things that I did that helped me on my journey of getting off of welfare. Sorry, I was looking at people passing by, being a little shy. Okay, so right now I'm on my balcony, um, and I guess that's irrelevant. Anyway, when I first got here in Texas, I was going from house to house with me and my little one. I only have one son, and I know people may have multiple children, and my situation might be very, very different than what yours is, but the the premise would be the same. Um, I made some really critical decisions. Like I said, I was going from house to house, going from friend's house, family's house, staying there. But for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, I'm a very independent person. And so me staying at other people's houses just wasn't going to work. So at some point, like I was staying with a friend of mine for about 2 months. I was working. My friend actually helped me out by watching my son, so I didn't have to do daycare. But daycare and finances seem to be one of the major issues with single parents, because you gotta work in order to keep a roof over your head, and you also need to make sure that your kids are safe during those hours that you are working, or and if you've got school children, children that are in school, at least have them watched over until you make it back after work. So, like I said, I was staying in with a friend of mine, who was kind enough to watch my son. My son at the time was around 4 years old, so he wasn't quite school age. But I only stayed there for about 2 months, and it must have been during summertime because my son didn't go to school during that time. So that was another blessing. And I worked a 9 to 5, but I was so far away that I definitely needed someone to watch my child and keep him until I got back from work. It was just so much that went into it. My friend, I love my friend with all my heart. It's just, we live very differently, and so it was definitely not a situation that I wanted to stay in or remain in. I mean, I needed my own place. And then a friend of his actually suggested to me or told me about a shelter that helps women and children, just through hard times. And she said that the only requirement was that I was working. And at the time I was working, so it was like perfect, you know what I mean? But I always had this stigma like, oh man, you know what I'm saying? I had to go to a shelter. Like I always had this idea that the shelter would be all run down, and I'd be sharing like space with other people that I probably couldn't trust, and and I would have to worry about my son, kind of like the idea, like when on what's that movie, the one with Will Smith, where he's in the shelter and he has to watch over his son because he didn't want any like strange people coming over and harming him. I always had that idea of what a shelter would look like. And let me not overlook the fact that I was on food stamps as well. I didn't do child support, but I did do food stamps for a while, to help out with food and at times cash assistance, in order to pay bills. I was with me working as well. I had this notion and goal that, look, I'm going to get off of welfare as soon as I can, because I have this idea that welfare really, if not used just to be used when you need it, can keep you in this circle of just neediness, and not to say, because there are people that definitely need it. I needed it at the time that I needed it, but after that period is over, which I strove to get off of welfare because I didn't want the rules, the regulations. It almost like it keeps you in this spot where you can't make over a certain amount, and so without making over a certain amount, you can't really live, you know what I mean? So I definitely didn't want to stay on welfare, but I definitely needed it when I needed it, you know what I mean? So fast forward, along with welfare, I made the critical decision to move into a shelter. This shelter, I didn't have to pay anything per se. What happened was I went into the shelter, or first I had to qualify, because they still do a screening process, and they do want to make sure that you have a job. They want to make sure that you are a single parent, and there's nothing crazy going on. And you can find, I'm pretty sure, I'm in Texas. The one that I found was in Dallas. It was called Interfaith. One of the best places that I could have ever run into. It was such a blessing. But I'm sure that there are shelters in your area that may do the same thing. That would be something that I would research as a single parent, definitely. Not for any reason. I didn't go in there for any reason except for financial. The shelter that I went into not only helped me with a place to stay, but it also helped me get my finances in order. Like, they gave classes. Financial classes. They gave like emotional distress classes. They gave like counselors that helped you kind of sort through the emotions that you might be feeling, because that's another thing. Like, as a single parent, you might be feeling lonely, guilty, angry, I needed help with all of that to sort through all of the feelings and emotions that I was going through, because I think that was a big part of why I was feeling a bit stuck as a parent. Besides the fact that I was a single parent, that's a very difficult challenge to have in life. And for some people, it's something that just happens to them, in my case, I walked out because I didn't feel that I wanted to raise a grown man, especially given that I had a child to raise. That's another story though. So in the shelter, and what they required me to do was to have a job, and then I would be putting money away. So it wasn't necessarily that I was paying rent, but I was putting money away to money that, so every month or every time that I got paid, I put something away, kind of like a tithing. And then at the end of the stay at the shelter, I got all that money back. So you can see how that's very helpful. And then on top of that, I didn't have to pay anything per se, like for rent. I just paid into my own savings. And the shelter provided us with extra food. It provided us with extra clothing, extra toiletries, different things like that. They assisted us with. So if you can, just give yourself that break. I know it may sound, you might be very independent and very, and probably prideful. I definitely was, and might not want to take that step. I'm not suggesting that you do per se, but it will give you the opportunity to get caught up with the different things. While I was at the shelter for about 18 months, during my stay, besides giving a certain percentage, and I decided which percentage I was going to save. And I did it consistently. And while besides putting money away, I was tackling different bills that I needed to get caught up on. So like I said, for me, it was very, very much financial. I got caught up on bills, and I took care of credit matters as well. That was another thing that they assisted me with. And if you're in the Texas area, they're in Dallas. And the program is called Interfaith. They assisted me tremendously. And matter of fact, I think they assist. Well, that's another video as well. I stayed at the shelter for about 18 months. So I had quite a bit of nest egg put away. But I started off with a promise to myself. I promised myself that, one, I would not be homeless again, and then two, that I would be getting off of welfare and staying off of welfare. It was a decision. I had to make a decision to get off of welfare. And it was very important for me to keep that promise to myself, not only myself, but to my child. So that would be one thing that I would suggest to you, is to make that promise to yourself and do whatever it takes. Not anything illegal, but do whatever it takes to stay off of welfare, because you'll be doing yourself a huge favor. Okay, so basically, I saved about 20% of my paycheck. Let's say if I'm making $100, I put away $40, or is that? I put away $40. Wait, I put away $20 out of $100. That's what that is. If I made $100, I put away at least $20, about 20% of my paycheck. And I did that every time I got paid. And I think that's one of the best things about the shelter, that particular shelter, was because they required us to work and put money away. That was what helped me. And then not having to take care of a $500, $600, $700 rent, you know what I mean? On top of all the other things, it just gave me a break mentally. You know, it gave me the support that I needed. Also, while I was at the shelter had a program where it allowed us to search for jobs. So although I had a job, you know, you always want to be looking to make more. And I know people say, oh, okay, well, if you make more gets taken away. But in any case, I worked really hard with the program to find a different position. And how I did that was I applied to a number of temp agencies. And I had the temp agencies looking for a job for me besides me looking for a job. So I would be looking online on Indeed.com, on LinkedIn, those are the two places that I generally use. And a lot of times those two would lead me to a temp. So they on Indeed.com and on LinkedIn, they have a place where you click on jobs, and then you type in the type of job that you would like. You can type in other things as well, like if you know the company that you want to work for, you can type that in as well. But I didn't limit myself to a particular company. I just put feelers out for the type of job that I wanted. And for me at the time, I wanted accounts payable positions. I did not have any experience. I repeat, I did not have any experience when I first started. And again, the temp agency, I did have a degree though. I did have a degree, so that did give me one leg up. I had an associate's degree, and that did give me a little bit of help. But I pray that you do not get discouraged if you don't have a degree, because all it takes is one person saying yes to you, and that's all it takes. So I implore you to keep going. Do not stop. I would suggest for you to reach out to as many temp agencies as you can and let them know what you're looking for, and have them look for the job for you, besides you also looking on places like Indeed. Not necessarily the newspapers anymore, because the newspapers, everybody's looking in the newspaper. Well, not anymore so much, but not necessarily the newspaper, but definitely on Indeed, definitely on LinkedIn. You do have to create a profile for LinkedIn, but actually you don't. You can look on jobs and find what you need. But it would be very good for your career if you did start a LinkedIn page, because it's just basically a place where you can build and network with other professionals, and you never know, one of those connections could actually help you find a better job. So that was another thing that I did. I basically made the promise to myself that I'd never be on welfare again and I'd never be homeless again. Then from there, I made a critical decision to go into the shelter, where they assisted me with saving money and putting money away. And then I began to look for a better job to assist me with not only saving money, but also to prepare me for when we did come out of the shelter. And then the more money I was making, the better off we were in taking care of the bills on our own, if that makes sense. Another thing that I worked on while I was at the shelter was that I paid off debt. I paid off things that, where people were calling you, calling me and, stressing me out. I tried to get rid of as many stressors as I could. That way I could focus on the things that I needed to focus on, which was my son and my household. So I took care of as many debt that I could while I was at the shelter. Like, the shelter was definitely a heaven sent for me. So if you can find a shelter that will provide you housing, free housing, but allow you to put money away, that would be so helpful to you. I promise you, it may sound like, I don't want to do that, I can take care of things, but I promise you that support, that extra support will help you and allow you to breathe, and allow you to just get on your feet. So at the end of the 18 months, I actually moved out of the shelter and got my first apartment. And I promise you, I won't say it's been smooth sailing. However, like I said, that job that allowed me to make more money allowed me to pay for the bills without extra assistance. And so I was definitely able to come off of welfare, because again, you can't make a certain amount while you're on welfare. You have to come off of welfare once you start making a certain amount of money. And that's exactly what I did, and it was the best thing that I could have ever done for me and my son, I promise you. So that is what I did, and how I went about going through things. And I'll go over it again. I made the promise to myself to never be homeless again and to get off of welfare. The next thing I did, I made a critical decision to move into a shelter specifically for women and children. I attended and participated in all the programs that they had, which were financial, emotional, like budgeting, different things like that assisted me. But again, as long as they allow you to put money away and you do not have to pay to live there, that would be a good situation. Sometimes you gotta weigh it out. It's better than paying for rent and then having all of these other things come down on you. The next thing I did was I saved money. I saved at least 20%, of what I was making. And I worked very hard and got a better job, and I utilized temp agencies to do that. And then I paid off a lot of debt, and that's how I went about it. Well, this is the end of this video. I hope you liked the content, and I hope it's helpful to you. And like I said, I'm not trying to push you into going to a shelter, but like I said, it can be very, very helpful if you're able to find one specifically for women and children, one that, you know, is set up really nice for women and children. Like I said, I don't want to push you into that, but that is part of my story and how I went about coming off of welfare. I hope it's helpful to you. I wish you the best, and peace, love, and hair grease.